Okay, we are continuing with the Daf Yomi for Sotah, Daf Yud Daled Amud Beis. We've already posted Daf Yud Gimel and Yud Daled Amud Aleph until halfway down on Yud Daled Amud Beis. So we're continuing there on 14b in Masechah Sotah, and we're explaining the brisa that describes the process of bringing a mincha offering in general, because the Sotah woman has to bring a carbon mincha. Her mincha is different, but in general, the Gemara is citing a brisa which comes from the Tosefta of Menachos to tell us how a general mincha was brought. So it states that you place the carbon mincha in a kli shares, and you are mekadesh it in the kli shares. So shmas mina. So we learn from here, says the Gemara in the middle point of 14b. Kli shares emikachin el midas. We learn from here that the kli shares, that this holy utensil which you bring the carbon mincha in order to sanctify the carbon mincha, you have to have intent to sanctify it. So is that what we want to prove? Is that the intent of the Gemara to prove that? The Gemara says no, it's not necessarily the case that that you need to have intent in order to sanctify something in the kli shares. Maybe we could read the brisa, says the Gemara, ema nosna b'kli shares. Maybe you have intent that you placed it in the kli shares in order to sanctify it. And then it says in the carbon mincha, that you place upon the mincha offering shamna ulvonasa. You place upon it the oil and the vona, as it says, so that the reason is because it says this in the pasuk that the Kohen pours oil and then he places the levona, and only afterwards do we say it's brought to the Bnei Aaron HaKohen. And we see from here that the non-Kohen is able to place the oil and the frankincense onto the mincha. And then you bring the Bryce says you bring the carbon mincha to the Kohen, and in order for the Kohen to do his avoda, which is the kamitza. And how do we know that? That afterwards you bring it, after the pouring of the oil, you bring it to the Kohen, because it says vehivia el bnei Aaron, and then the kamitza takes place. And then the Kohen brings it next to the altar. The Kohen brings it next to the altar. Then the Kohen brings it to the southwest corner of the altar, corresponding to the corner of the altar, vidayo, and that's sufficient. So the Gemara says, Minoan, how do we know that the bringing of the mincha to the southwest is to the southwest corner of the altar? Because it says, "V'zos Toras mincha." This is the law of the mincha. Krevos bnei Aaron. The sons of Aaron need to bring it. Lifnei Hashem, before Hashem, El Pnei HaMizbeach, towards the front of the altar. Vitanya, and we learned, so it says two separate words. Lifnei Hashem, before Hashem, means it needs to be in front of the Heichal, in front of the entrance into the temple. And the Pnei HaMizbeach means it needs to be towards the front of the altar. Vitanya, Lifnei Hashem, Yachal B'mayrav. I might think that it should be in the west, i.e., that's what's called Lifnei Hashem, because it's opposite the entrance into the Beis HaMikdash, and there's nothing in between the Mincha and the Beis HaMikdash. Talmud Omer Al Pnei HaMizbeach, that you need to bring it to the side of the front of the altar, and that's the southern side, which is where there's the ramp, which is the Panav Shel Mizbeach. V'i Al Pnei HaMizbeach, I might think that you're supposed to bring it to the southern side. Yachol B'darom, I might think you're supposed to bring it to the southern side because it says Lifnei Hashem. But it can't be, okay? So, but it also says Lifnei Hashem. So how can you bring it to the southern side if it also says Lifnei Hashem, which means in front of the sanctuary? Okay, it's on Makisha B'Karen Dromis Ma'arav. So you obviously have to bring it to the southwest side. Kineged Chudash HaKoren. The southwest corner of the altar corresponds to the entrance into the Beis HaMikdash. V'dayo, and that's sufficient. The Gemara brings another way to understand, another brisa that explains this. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Yachol b'ma'arava shal karen o droma shal karen." I might think all you need to bring it, Yagishena, you only need to bring it to the west of the mizbeach, or the southern part of the mizbeach. Amres kol makom shata motzes shnei mikros. Anytime you have two verses, echa mekayim atzmo, and there's one of the verses you can fulfill its words and also the words of the other verse. But one of them you fulfill your words and you nullify the other words. You leave aside the one that you fulfill its own word and you nullify the other verse. Tovsin, you leave aside the one in which you can't interpret it both ways. V'tovsin es shemekayim atzmo mekayim es chavera, and you grab a hold of the one in which you could understand both verses together. Kishato omer ofnei Hashem b'mayrav. If you would just say Lefnei Hashem, which means it's in the west, bitalta al panei hamizbeach, then you've nullified the idea that you have to bring it to the front of the altar, bidarim, which is in the south. Kishato omer al panei hamizbeach, when it says panei hamizbeach, which is in the south, kiyamta lefnei Hashem b'marav. Then how are you going to fulfill the idea of Lefnei Hashem, which is in the west? So you bring it to the southwest corner. So how have you fulfilled the verse of Lefnei Hashem if you're just bringing it to the southwest? Since the walls of the sanctuary are going to finish with the walls of the altar. If that's the case, when the Kohen is standing in the southern part of the altar, he's not opposite the sanctuary. So Amar Rav Ashi Kasavar, no, the author of our Tana is at the position Kul Mizbeach B'Tzafon Kai. The whole Mizbeach is in the northern side of the courtyard of the temple, like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that the entire altar was in the northern side of the Azara, and it finishes in the middle of the Azara. And so since the sanctuary was in the middle of the Azara, the entrance into the sanctuary, so therefore we're going to say the sanctuary was half in the north and half in the south. So therefore, if you're standing on the southern side of the altar, you're exactly opposite the entrance into the temple. And so if the Kohen brings the mincha to the southwest corner of the altar, then indeed it's still called Lefnei Hashem because it's opposite the Heichal. And why does it say Mai V'dayo? Why does it say and then it's sufficient? So Amar Rav Ashi Itzrich, we need this to say and then it's sufficient. I might have thought that that the mitzvah of Agasha means that you actually have to pour the flour offering onto the southern corner. Kamash Malan onto the southwest corner of the altar. Kamash Malan, no. You just have to bring the utensil. A lot of there's some of the Rebbes on Shabbos, they would bring the challah like a mincha offering and touch it to the corner of their Shabbos table. Maybe you're actually supposed to pour the flour onto the corner. It says in the pasuk, the Kohen brings it close and he brings it close to the altar. Just like when the owner brings the mincha to the Kohen, he brings it with the utensil. So too, the agasha is next to the altar in a utensil. And then it says, also it's echad. And then he moves the levona to one side, and the Kohen does the kmitza. Why? We don't want him, when the Kohen does the kmitza, we don't want him to bring up the levona with it. If when he does the kmitza, he has a pebble, or gargar melech, or a grain of salt, or koret, levona, or a kernel of frankincense, puzzle, it's disqualified. And he does the komets from the place where there's oil. And what's the source? From the flour and the oil. And also from the girsa, he has to take the mincha. When the Kohen takes the mincha, he takes it from the girsa mishamna, meaning to say he takes it from the fine flour with the oil. And then the Kohen places the mincha into the klisharis and he sanctifies it in the klisharis. Now, why does he have to sanctify twice? First, when he puts it into the first utensil, and then after the komets, he takes the komets, he has to sanctify it again in another klisharis. Why does he have to sanctify it twice? Because it's like blood. Why? Just like the blood, even though it's sanctified in the neck of the animal, then he's going to sanctify, he needs to sanctify it again with another klishar. It's just like when you take a knife, you slaughter the animal, the blood is sanctified by the knife of the shechita, that sanctifies the blood. Then you have to put in another utensil and sanctify it again. Here too, there's no distinction. And then you gather up the levona and you place it on top of the flour. The Kohen gathers it up. It's based upon the pasuk. You place the levona on top of it. We're on top of your daled amabeis. And then you bring it up and you offer it in a klisharis. So the Gemara asks the question, Beklisharis makter, do you really burn it on the klisharis while it's in the vessel. No, you burn it to the altar. Ela ema maleo b'klisharis laktira. You bring it up in the klisharis in order to then burn it. Umocho v'nosno agabe ha'ishim, and then you salt it and you place it on the fire. D'chsev kol karbancha mincha b'melch temlach. Because it says all your carbon mincha shall be salted. So we'll stop here. This is we've finished now the daf for Yudalad Amabez of Sotah.